It's high time Canada recognized that there are diverse ways of raising capital in this country. And we cannot, as a country, celebrate diversity until our financial systems recognize and accept that immigrant communities raise capital differently. My story begins in Zimbabwe, where I was born, raised, and educated. Raised by my grandmother, among several cousins, and that has influenced who I am. Coming from a large family, sharing a very small space, and I trained as a broadcast journalist, despite not having a television or a radio at home. I then moved to Canada, not by choice, but circumstances brought me to this country. And I also trained in international development because, much more than just reporting on events, I wanted to be able to contribute towards that. And I've been working in that space for many years. And I recently transitioned to delving into consultancy, and the intent being to accelerate what I believe is how development ought to be defined and designed, and that is doing it from an anti colonial perspective. And I'm a mother and a wife. I arrived in Canada in 2005, and I found myself in a situation where my Zimbabwean community was coming to me for advice on a lot of issues. And I set up a Facebook page called 263 True North. True North being Canada, and 263 is the telephone code for Zimbabwe. And that was a platform for Zimbabwean women living in Canada to lean into each other, to learn from each other, and to identify opportunities. We talk about everything from mental health, wealth creation. And out of that Facebook group came the 263 True North Investment, which was an investment company investing in real estate. And many of us are working in the front line of health. And I knew that many of the women, like myself, were coming in with massive brain power, which was not being fully utilized in this country. And I felt that there was an urgent need to move, or rather to add to our frontline work and position us to shape and to lead the development or adaptation of systems in this country, so that they reflect the changing demographic. And key to that was claiming or demanding greater and meaningful financial participation, because we were on the margins of the economy. And that's why at Firestarter Ideas, we have this program that I designed called Margins to Mainstream, which is about moving women. I've had some men groups as well, from the margins of the economy into the mainstream. So as I was doing this work, I recognized and painfully learned that the economy in this country is designed specifically to be an enclave of a few people who do not look like me. And in order for us to break into that system and to fully develop and benefit from the sweat that we put in on the front lines, we needed to be intentional with how we structure ourselves and build ourselves as a community. So also, if I can provide an example, how we raise capital in our communities is very different to how a white male Canadian would come across money to invest, for example. They are more likely to have an inheritance. But as a first generation immigrant, how we mobilize ourselves with rosters and raising money by contributing incrementally was something that I learned was close to being illegal in this country when you're bringing money together, because it was regarded as inviting investors into a project without a prospectus, and you need the Securities Commission. And yet we come from an environment where we build our economy based on trust. Even as we are cultivating agriculturally, we take turns. Like on this day, everybody in the village goes to Sharon's field and we work on her field and she provides the food. And the next day, we go to Jane's field and we work there. She provides food, and that's how we raise capital. And we wanted to do the same, but it was like trying to fit a square into a circle, and the economy is not designed like that. It sort of criminalizes how best we know to raise capital. And individually, it is it's not perceivable that you can raise the deposit that is required to purchase a home to establish a new generation for myself here in Canada. So that meant knocking on many doors and identifying where I could hack the system, the financial system, the economic system of this country, because it wasn't giving. We had to demand and poke where there was a hole, see how we could make it bigger and fit in. It's an ongoing struggle. We still haven't quite gotten there yet, but the challenges and the barriers exist. The economy has not responded to how different communities raise capital. It is designed to keep the economy and the benefits of borrowing, from example, as something that is exclusive and a privilege to a few people. Once we are established here financially, many of us are working to improve at home. So for every income, for every woman who sits at the table, they are representing several other people in Zimbabwe. So when they are financially secure, it also means that there is financial security in Zimbabwe. And here in Canada, it's really putting structure to how we were doing what we call susu or partner. It's got different names in different countries. Recognizing that there was a lot of money, which I say is on the margins of the economy, as women are participating in susu and partner. How then do we harness that financial capital and galvanize the women specifically to come together and to then invest so that they have shares in a registered company? That's the work that Firestarter does, to organize and structure and put together systems so that women can go to the bank and say, I hold shares in this registered company, and that can go in their asset column, as opposed to them saying, I'm a member of a Rosca, or I'm a member of a partner group, and in August, they are all giving the money to me. And that is what Firestarter is seeking to do. And the name Firestarter is very intentional because I'm aware that the work that I'm doing is to create that spark. And my vision is that this will catch on and it will develop into something big, a raging inferno, and that will change the lives of not just women, children, and families here in Canada, and not just Zimbabweans, but for many other communities that are currently financially marginalized despite working so hard in this country. So basically, when we arrive in a country, the first thing often that we look for is, where is my tribe? Where are the other Zimbabweans? Number one. Or, and this story is true for other immigrant groups as well. Where's my tribe? Where are my Zimbabweans? And then secondly, religion is a big part. Where's the church? And after that, when there's 4 or 5 Zimbabwean women, and I know it's true for other countries as well, Jamaica, Paraguay, other Latin American communities. Once there's 4 or 5 of us, it's like, okay, let's do partner or susu or eraska, where every pay period we take turns. Everybody, we agree how much we each contribute. So everyone will give, let's say they'll give you $200 every pay period. If there's five of us, you are getting 800 plus your 200, you now have $1,000. Let's say you wanted to go and buy a beat up car, so you have mobility because you don't have credit to go and get a car off the lot. And there could be 10 of us, so you could be receiving, I don't know, $2,000, which is enough to go buy a used car. And then we take turns, we rotate giving the money to the next person. And that's how we raise capital. And this is how you get to see how much capital is on the margins, which Canada could potentially benefit from if only the system would recognize, acknowledge, and respect that type of capital raising. So there's a saying, he who pays the piper, is it plays the tune or determines the tune or something like that? So you pay the piper, it's your tune that's get paid. So the resources, the relationship right off the gate between the donor country, and the implementing country where development is being implemented is unequal because the funder has the money and they determine the mandates, they determine the priorities because the implementing country is responding in a proposal to what the funder has set up. So, right off the bat, it is not my mother or my grandmother back in Zimbabwe who's deciding what ought to be prioritized. So it's a new form of colonization. The systems that have been put in place, where when you're looking at monitoring and evaluation systems, NGOs, INGOs from here, international development organizations from here, will go to a developing country. They will extract data and information, but the people that have provided that data have no idea how it is being used and how their lives are being improved. And it is only based on the metrics of the donor whether the project is successful or not. So we start with the priorities. Whose priorities? Whose agenda? And so definitely because it's coming from the funder to the recipient or the beneficiary, it's how I coin it as colonial. And yet we need to have the other partner where the development is being implemented be the one that says the shoe is pinching me here. Let's start from there. And also acknowledging, because the narrative that seems to be out there is that, as I'll speak broadly and generally, as people in Africa, we are passively waiting and being lazy and just breeding children, waiting for development or for funding to be given to us. And that nothing could be further from the truth. And having worked as a development worker in both countries, in a receiving country as well as sitting at the funder's desk, I've experienced firsthand how funders just jet in for a couple of days and decide, okay, this is working, this is not working. But they are blind to context. What else is going on? What are the contributions? And for the hours that women spend implementing this project, unpaid work, the time poverty that is created pushing the funders' agenda is ridiculous, and it ought to stop. We need to stop and look at this as a partnership and not the savior mentality where because someone is bringing the money, therefore it has a greater value than the time, the knowledge, the space, and the land where the development is being implemented. And I don't want to get started on the historical background, like how did we get here in the first place? The biggest success has been the mobilization, bringing women together, and for the audacity to believe that together we can, to organize ourselves as women despite our hectic schedules, working 2-3 jobs, just coming together and learning together from the governance piece, where our board is just ourselves. We constitute the board and making the purchases, like for example, investing in real estate as Zimbabwean women immigrant. That's a big win. The economy, unfortunately, has not been kind, but we dared. And we did get in and do it. So I'll say that's a win. Just the organizing, putting structure, and incorporating. The resistance and I would term the economic framework as hostile. So after we raise capital, so there are different groups that the Firestarter has organized. So after we raise capital, we have more than enough for the deposit that is required, but getting a mortgage has been next to impossible. We've had to also dispose of some assets at a loss, significant loss, because the system does not yet know how to extend credit to groups or to corporations such as the ones that raise capital in this very legitimate way that we do. Okay. My vision is that immigrant women who came from whatever country here into Canada have established corporations in this country, established corporations, that entities with the capability to be passed on to the next generation. So it's not going to be a business that I run and if I die, then it goes with me, or one that is not able to withstand any shocks of the economy, but looking at multi-generational wealth creation of entities that are owned by immigrant women in this country. We work so hard already.